Welcome to today's deep dive. We are so glad you're here.
Yeah, we've got a really fascinating one to get into today.
We really do, because I know you listening right now, you love a good aha moment, right? You want to understand those big cultural shifts we see on screen, but you probably want to skip the massive info overload.
Exactly. Just the insights, none of the heavy academic jargon.
Right. So on the desk today, we've got this incredible analytical essay and also a really detailed video script. And they are breaking down this massive 2026 shift in boys' love, or BL, media.
It's a huge shift. I mean, it completely changed the landscape of the genre.
It really did. Like, think about 3 years ago. If you asked anyone to picture the ultimate romantic climax on television, the image was, almost universal.
Yeah, it was always the same setting.
Right. It was a breathless confession in a high-speed glass elevator overlooking this neon-lit city skyline, or a dramatic confrontation in a billionaire CEO's pristine corner office.
Which was the absolute gold standard for years.
Exactly. But today, the most intensely debated, highly anticipated romance in media features two guys sharing a broken, oscillating fan in a humid, dusty rice field.
It is such a stark contrast.
Right, so our mission today is to figure out what happened to our collective brains that made us crave this. We're going to unpack exactly why these intense on-screen romances abandon sleek skyscrapers for, dusty back roads, and what this pastoral shift actually reveals about our own psychological needs. Okay, let's unpack this.
So to really get into the mechanics of this shift, we first need to define what audiences are actively running away from.
Right, what are they escaping?
Well, for years, the genre was defined by that high-rise romance. The cold, hyper-competent executive and the earnest, hardworking intern.
Oh yeah, the classic trope.
Exactly. And the romance always unfolded between board meetings, strict schedules, corporate lobbies, and the city itself was basically positioned as an aspirational character.
Like it was the ultimate goal.
Right. It represented endless possibility, success, and this very modern, aggressive type of power.
And that dynamic used to feel like pure escapism. But sitting here in 2026, watching characters navigate high-pressure office politics and toxic work cultures.
It doesn't feel like a fantasy anymore.
No, not at all. It feels like opening your own work email on a Sunday morning.
Right. It's just incredibly stressful.
Yeah, it's a jarring reminder of the daily grind. I don't want to watch endless digital communication on my screen when I do that all day.
And that creeping exhaustion is exactly what's driving this. There is a very real phenomenon taking hold right now, and the essay calls it skyscraper fatigue.
Skyscraper fatigue. I like that term.
Yeah, it's very fitting.
Yeah.
Because urban settings simply no longer symbolize ambition for the modern viewer. Instead, they represent repetition.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they mirror the exhausting reality of living inside modern systems that just demand constant, unrelenting stimulation. I mean, a crowded subway isn't a romantic setting for a meet cute anymore.
No, it's just sensory overload.
Exactly.
And I guess that fatigue totally explains the dramatic visual reset we are seeing, too.
It really does. The visual contrast is huge.
Because we are basically trading the blue and gray tones of the concrete jungle, the cold steel, the glass, the artificial fluorescent office lighting, for what's being called the green palette.
Right. The vibrant greens, earthy browns, those warm ambers.
It's so much softer.
It is. Visually, it functions as a literal digital rest for the viewer's eyes. You're watching natural sunlight shift and fade across a valley instead of, glaring at a blinking neon sign.
Which honestly sounds so relaxing. But it's not just the visuals, right? Because the city creates a massive narrative problem, too.
It does. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the sheer scale of a city allows characters to easily avoid their problem.
Oh, because there are so many escape routes.
Precisely. If an interaction becomes uncomfortable, the city offers total anonymity. You can step out of a cafe, blend into a crowd of 1,000 strangers, and just disappear.
Right. You can delay difficult conversations by literally hiding in the noise.
Exactly. There's always another bar to go to, another train to catch.
Yeah.
Or, some other distraction to bury your feelings under.
You can just vanish into the subway crowd. You can ghost someone, and realistically, you might never see them again in a big city.
Which completely lowers the emotional stakes.
Exactly, because if we follow this pastoral shift into the countryside, you absolutely do not have that luxury.
Not at all. Moving out to a rural setting fundamentally alters the physical and emotional rules of engagement.
Yeah.
You are completely removing that safety net of the city.
Because in a village, there is no away.
No.
You have a terrible, heart-wrenching argument, you storm off dramatically, and then you run into that exact same person 10 minutes later at the literal only grocery store in town.
You're trapped in the same small ecosystem.
Yeah.
And this introduces the mechanics of forced proximity, but on a macro level.
Wait, macro level? How so?
Well, in an urban story, forced proximity is usually a really brief, contrived scenario. Two characters get stuck in an elevator for an hour, or, they have to share a cab in the rain.
Right.
But in a rural setting, forced proximity isn't just a plot device. It is the ongoing, inescapable environmental condition.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And the physical logistics of the countryside just force the issue even further.
Right, because resources are inherently limited.
Exactly. Like the local guest house is completely booked up for a festival, so they have to share a single bed. Or there is literally only one bus out of town per day, and they missed it.
You can't just order a rideshare to escape a bad situation.
No.
But it goes beyond just the physical logistics. The social ecosystem is entirely different, too. In the metropolis, your choices just kind of dissolve into the background of millions of other people. Your business is your own.
But in these rural stories, visibility is constant.
Very constant.
Which brings up my favorite part, the local aunties dynamic.
Yes, the neighborhood watch.
In a village, the local gossips essentially act as the primary plot drivers. They are watching everything. They comment on who bought what at the market. They notice who walked home with whom.
They naturally accelerate the tension between the characters because nothing can happen in a vacuum.
Right. But wait, can I just pause and challenge this idea for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
Because if you think about it practically, a small town sounds incredibly suffocating.
It definitely can be.
I mean, being lonely in a subway crowd actually gives you a massive amount of personal freedom. You can be whoever you want, but being constantly observed by your neighbors on a dusty back road, having your every move scrutinized by the local aunties,
Yeah.
that sounds like a complete nightmare. How is that romantic?
You make a really valid point. It is a nightmare for someone who is trying to hide.
Oh, yeah.
And that is exactly why it works so brilliantly as a narrative engine. You're right that the city offers freedom, but in romance, that freedom allows for emotional avoidance.
Oh, I see.
The shift we are seeing is a move from external chaos to internal intensity.
Meaning the characters can no longer run away from their own feelings.
Precisely. Because every glance, every hesitation, every slight deviation from the norm is noticed and interpreted by that small community.
Right.
A misunderstanding in the city just fades into the background noise. But in a village, a misunderstanding lingers really loudly in the quiet.
That is so true.
Every interaction carries massive weight because it cannot be easily brushed off. When there is nowhere left to physically run, the only direction characters can move is toward each other.
Wow. But that creates an entirely new set of problems for these characters, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's not just that they are physically trapped in this environment, they are digitally trapped too.
Yes, the rural setting forces a mandatory digital detox.
Which is huge. Think about how much of modern romance is mediated by screens. Like in the city, communication is so heavily filtered.
Very curated.
You type a message, you delete it, you rewrite it, you deliberately wait 3 hours to hit send so you don't look overly eager.
There is a constant buffer between intention and expression. Emotions are delayed, softened, or distorted by that whole digital infrastructure.
It's like having a smartphone is basically wearing emotional armor. You can constantly curate your feelings.
That's a great analogy.
But taking away the Wi-Fi or, having a character accidentally drop their phone into a river, which happens surprisingly often in these plots.
What really does happen a lot.
It strips off that armor entirely. It forces this raw vulnerability that audiences are just starving for.
Exactly. Without that constant connectivity, characters are forced into direct, unmediated interaction.
Yeah.
Prolonged eye contact has to replace the text message. Silence replaces the constant ping of notifications. Physical presence becomes unavoidable.
Because when you can't retreat to your phone to look busy or distracted at a dinner table, you actually have to sit with the awkwardness. You have to sit with what you feel.
Which brings back a storytelling pacing that fast-paced urban lives had almost entirely erased.
The slow burn.
The slow burn. We live in a reality where everything is immediate, where we consume and discard information. And sometimes relationships at lightning speed.
It's exhausting.
It is. And the pastoral setting recalibrates that pacing. It reminds the viewer that genuine intimacy is not instant. It is earned.
Yes.
It requires patience, presence, and the willingness to endure discomfort.
And that totally changes the entire currency of affection in these stories, doesn't it?
It really does.
We move away from capital-driven romance to what the essay terms manual labor as a love language.
It's a stark contrast to the CEO trope.
Huge contrast. The city executive shows love by flexing their wealth, right? Buying out an entire restaurant for a private dinner, gifting a luxury watch, or handing over the keys to a penthouse.
Very transactional.
Right. But in these rural settings, we see a much more grounded, earned version of masculinity. Characters demonstrate they care through physical effort.
Yes.
They repair a leaky roof before a monsoon hits. They harvest crops side by side in the blistering sun. They spend 3 hours cooking a complex meal over an open flame.
The affection is demonstrated through the sacrifice of effort and time, rather than just swiping a credit card.
Right.
It fundamentally redefines what it means to provide for someone.
And because daily life is so stripped down, the stakes of every small gesture are massively amplified.
Oh, entirely.
Without a million flashy distractions, simply handing someone a piece of fresh fruit you picked yourself, or silently tilting an umbrella to keep them dry in a sudden downpour, those tiny actions carry the monumental, earth-shattering weight of a grand proposal in a high-rise restaurant.
Because in a world stripped of noise, the subtle shifts become monumental. The environment basically acts as an amplifier for intimacy.
It really does.
And this brings us to a really crucial point from the video script. The landscape in these stories ceases to be just a pretty backdrop.
Right.
The environment itself becomes an active, participating third character in the romance.
And it isn't just a monolithic countryside aesthetic either. This pastoral shift takes on highly specific, culturally distinct flavors across Asia, depending on the geography.
It's fascinating. Let's compare how different regions utilize their natural environments to dictate the emotional tone.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Take Thailand, for example,
Yes.
which has perfected what we might call the tropical pastoral.
Oh, right. The aesthetic there is heavily focused on lush, vibrant rice fields, winding waterways, and this overwhelming sense of heat and warmth.
Exactly.
And the overarching themes are almost always centered around healing and community integration. It's like the classic return to home narrative.
Right, you take a deeply burnt-out city boy, drop him back into his provincial roots, and he slowly finds his soul again.
Yes, through the enveloping warmth of a village family and the physical connection to the soil.
It's a very communal, open, and vibrant type of landscape. But if we look at South Korea, they utilize their geography to create the exact opposite emotional effect.
Which the video script calls coastal melancholy.
Yes, coastal melancholy.
Because they aren't in warm rice fields, they are in isolated, windswept seaside villages, and the visual contrasts are incredibly stark.
Very stark.
You have the freezing, harsh, vast ocean constantly pushing up against the cozy, enclosed warmth of a small seaside cafe or a local fish market.
And the ocean there isn't just pretty scenery. It serves a direct metaphorical purpose.
Right.
The vastness of the freezing sea represents the massive hidden depths of the character's unspoken emotions. Where the Thai landscape encourages opening up and joining the community, the Korean coastal landscape mirrors the character's internal restraint and isolation.
That makes perfect sense. And then you look at Japan, which leans heavily into the concept of nostalgic seasons.
Which is beautiful.
So beautiful. The pacing of the romance is deeply rooted in the physical changing of the environment. From the brief, fleeting bloom of cherry blossoms to the heavy, isolating silence of winter snow.
And this is deeply tied to the cultural philosophy of mono no aware, which is the beautiful, bittersweet transience of things.
Oh, wow.
A society that places such heavy cultural emphasis on the shifting of seasons naturally applies that philosophy to romance.
That is so poetic.
It really is. In these Japanese narratives, the life cycle of the forest directly mirrors the internal growth of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
The passing of time is made physically visible in the landscape, silently reminding the viewer that feelings, much like the seasons, cannot be rushed. They must be allowed to unfold naturally.
I love that. And finally, we see Taiwan utilizing the cultural heartland approach.
Right.
Here, the rural setting is used to bridge the gap between the past and the future. The romance is intertwined with preserving local heritage.
Yeah, that's a huge theme there.
Like, the plot might revolve around organizing a traditional village festival, or two characters bonding over the preservation of a dying family craft, like wood carving or traditional tea farming. The love story becomes intrinsically linked to honoring one's roots.
And if you look closely at each of these regional variations, you realize the setting is the engine of the story.
Yeah, you couldn't just pick up the plot of a coastal Korean drama and drop it into a bustling Taipei apartment without destroying the narrative entirely.
Exactly. The weather, the specific geography, the local cultural traditions, they are literally dictating the emotional genre of the romance.
The story is fundamentally tethered to the dirt it takes place on. So, if the environment is this deeply tied to the narrative right now, where does the genre even go from here?
That's the big question.
Like, have we hit peak village? Will the CEO in the high-rise ever make a comeback?
Well, urban stories won't vanish completely. There will always be an audience for complex, fast-paced, high-stakes energy.
Right, sure.
But the unquestioned dominance of the concrete jungle is over. This pastoral shift has proven that modern audiences will sit still for a slower story.
Yeah.
They will watch a quiet romance unfold without the constant injection of external corporate drama.
So we're just going to keep moving further off the grid.
The trajectory suggests exactly that. We're likely to see a movement toward even more localized, heavily remote settings.
Really? Like where?
We're talking stories set in high-altitude mountain tribes, deep desert outposts, or completely isolated islands.
Oh, wow.
Yet, the generic, interchangeable cityscape simply cannot provide the emotional friction that viewers are demanding right now.
Because viewers in 2026 don't care how much wealth a character can hide behind in a penthouse.
Exactly.
They want to see how much of their true selves they are willing to expose when all the modern conveniences, all the safety nets, and all the digital distractions are totally stripped away.
They want the specificity of the location, and they want the stillness it forces upon the characters.
Which brings this entirely back to you listening to us right now.
Yeah.
You might be wondering why you were suddenly so captivated by a story about two guys fixing a tractor in a field.
It seems random, but it's not.
Right. The appeal of these rural romances is that they offer a quiet subconscious resistance to our everyday reality. You and I live in a fast-paced, notification-driven, hyper-connected world where we are expected to be available at all times.
It's exhausting.
It is. Watching these stories serves as an emotional refuge. It is a dedicated break from the exhausting demand for your attention.
It grants the audience permission to mentally slow down. But, it also raises an incredibly important question, something for you to ponder as you go about your day.
Oh, I like where this is going.
If we are increasingly turning to fictional rural isolation just to witness genuine grounded intimacy, what does that reveal about our own real-world relationships?
Oh, wow. Are hyper-connected, fast-paced city lives actually making us less capable of truly seeing the people sitting right across the table from us?
Exactly.
Like, are we using our own digital noise, our group chats, our social feeds, our endless scrolling to avoid the exact kind of raw vulnerability that we so desperately crave when we turn on the screen?
We use the city to hide.
Yeah.
Just like the characters do.
Man, that is a heavy, brilliant thought to leave on, because it really makes you look back at that empty glass elevator and realize maybe the luxury wasn't the penthouse view after all.
Maybe not.
Maybe the ultimate luxury is just having the time, the patience, and the quiet to actually look someone in the eye. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. See you in the next one.